Clubroom. It's brought to you by the Winning Again Academy. My name is Mark Moyer, and I've been working with athletes and executives for 4,000 years, really helping them go from one career to the next, whether it's from sports to their next great chapter, or from one position or one career to another. And one of the things that I find is possibly the most challenging thing that most people face is their discomfort with networking, with chatting with other people, and really drilling down and getting to know them. And one of the most important tips I can give to you today is the whole thing where people always ask, even at these tables and everywhere, they ask, well, what do you do? Well, I don't want you to answer what you do. Instead, going forward, I want you to answer what you bring to the table. Talk about your skill set and your capabilities. Keep it short and to the point, maybe 10 seconds, no more. And then talk about some of the people you'd love to meet, or some of the connections you'd like to make, or some of the areas you'd love to be in. That's the kind of thing that I want to see and hear you all say, not, gee, I work for a wealth management firm, but instead say, I'm the person that really has some financial strategies that completely transform your wealth going forward for the rest of your life. And I've got some ideas that can really help you make that transformation, something like that. So remember, when someone asks what you do, don't tell them what you do. Ask them, respond back with your skill set, your capabilities, what you bring to the table, and where you'd like to take it going forward. I'm going to start with Jacob Turner. Jacob, fantastic guy. I met him a few months ago. He grew up and is from St. Louis, Missouri, which is smack dab in the middle of the country, as far as I know, with that big arch thing. And boy, I sound so sophisticated right now. Anyways, he was drafted out of college, or before college, and he honored his commitment. Did not honor his commitment. He dishonored his commitment. I don't even know what that's called. But he's played for several teams, which I think is kind of cool, because what that says is this guy was always in demand as a pitcher. So fantastic guy, Jacob Turner, and he retired a couple years ago, and now he recently formed JL Strategic Wealth. Batting next is Josh, and Josh Kalinowski. Man, is this guy very impressive guy. Played for a few years in the Rockies system. Really thought that his future and his identity and everything was baseball to the 10th power. But he soon discovered that he has a higher calling, and I know that sounds very religious, but it's across the board. This guy is sort of balls to the walls with something that he's calling Kingsmen, and it's a fantastic organization that really pulls together people that can really use a boost to a lot of different things, and I'm going to have him tell you more about that. But he's from Casper, Wyoming, beautiful part of the country. He's involved with real estate, involved with a few different things, but Kingsman, it sounds like, is his passion and where he's going to be going. He did retire about, give or take, 15 years ago. So he's been out for a while. He's been going through his transition, but I'm excited to have him here. And this guy, I can just basically say, Josh, take it away, and he will. He is that good.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you having me on here, man.
Always a pleasure. I feel like it's a little deja vu. But thanks for being here. So gentlemen, Jacob, hi. Josh, hi. Thanks for being here. So really the first question, I'm going to start with Jacob, actually. This summit today is really meant to be all about and adjusting to life after sport, and really trying to figure out, well, not just what do I want to do afterwards, but when do I start doing it? How do I start thinking about it? Why do I start thinking about it? Why should I care? I made a kajillion dollars, or maybe I didn't make a kajillion dollars. But Jacob, tell me a little bit about your situation where, you've been retired now for about 3 years or so. But at what point did you start thinking about life after baseball?
Yeah, I think that's the $1 million question. How do you transition out of the game? Because at some point everybody's going to do it. And for me, I think my situation was a little bit unique in the fact that I had some really early success in my career, and then had a lot of ups and downs after that. So it kind of gave me a good sense that, hey, this isn't going to last forever, and kind of got me to start thinking probably earlier than most guys about what I wanted to do next. And then I think for me, it's just connecting what I was passionate about with what was out there. And one thing that I think is just so helpful that I want, anybody to hear in any space, whether they're transitioning out of it or thinking about transitioning out of it, is there's no time like now to start networking, like you talked about, and just start taking those meetings with people that are in the space that you think you want to be in. And whether you're 100% sure that you want to be in it or not, the more education you can get around it, I just think the better off you ultimately are.
So how, in your case, what made you say, well, gee, I think I'm going to get into finance, and what started all that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think signing at 18, just having the responsibility, I had a really good family dynamic situation around me. My parents did a great job just explaining the situation to me, but at the same time, they put the responsibility on me to go out and build that team of people around you. And I think during my own career, just asking guys in the locker room, hey, what are you doing on this? Or how are you invested this way? Or who do you use? And you always get the same answer. They'd say, I got a guy. And then you'd ask a
I got a
question
guy.
one layer deeper, and they'd say, well, I really don't know what's going on. So really my passion is just helping to educate guys on exactly what is going on with how they're invested. I mean, it's extremely hard to make a significant amount of money in any sport. And I just think it's a way that I can give back to the game in a sense, and just helping guys just get more educated on the topic. Because what I found is most guys want to be educated on it. They just don't know what questions to ask.
Well, and that's to me one of the big frustrating things about when an athlete has a support team, or even just one person or two people. Sometimes, unfortunately, it can be a family member. It can be somebody that says, "Oh yeah, I got your back. Don't worry about it," that kind of thing. But if it's somebody else who's an expert at stuff, I think sometimes the athlete may be, I don't want to say it the wrong way, but almost embarrassed to ask questions because they say, "Well, I don't want to appear to be unknowledgeable, stupid, whatever it is." Well, that to me, that person has an obligation to teach the athlete. And look, it doesn't mean that you're going to explain everything about municipal bonds and how they blah, 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 but maybe it's just going to be some of the basics on, hey, listen, if you were to give me, let's say $100,000 to put into blah, 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 here's why I think these are good ideas. And here's when we can look at them and revisit them and that sort of thing. And I think that I've found that when an athlete hears a lot of that, they feel much more comfortable about sort of everything around them. Some people argue, oh, well, they're an athlete, they shouldn't worry about anything, they should just focus on their sport. But I've found that when you do that and you're blissfully ignorant, things fall apart quickly, or can fall apart quickly anyway. So that's great. Hey, Josh, what was your, I mean, look, obviously you've been out of the game a little bit longer, but, and we've talked about this before, but tell me a little bit about your situation when, and by the way, this is probably the time that you can plug the book, just saying. But tell me a little bit about, when it was time for you to sort of formally decide, you know what, I can't do this anymore. Tell me a little bit about that time period.
You bet. Well, first of all, it's always good to be on a panel with Jacob because, I mean, this is how you do life correctly, right? You go pursue your passions and you already have plan B ready and you just easily transition into it. And I know that obviously it wasn't always easy, but Jacob did a fantastic job of that. So let's just take the opposite of everything that he did. And that's exactly what I did in my life. You're right. I mean, here's the thing is that, and I know that Jacob would say the same thing here is like, we all knew from a very early age what we were created to do, why we had the genetic makeup that we had, why we had the strength in our arm, why we were successful, because we were meant to play professional baseball. And, when you get to pursue that, that is awesome. And you are in your lane. I think the mistake that we make, and especially with athletes, I think what you find is that you get this misconception that is your purpose, to be a professional athlete. And the disconnect, what happens is when you take the jersey off, you also take off your identity, you take off your purpose, you take off why you were created. And, that's great if you can have a long life and longevity and you retire like a Nolan Ryan, or you retire, like Cal Ripken Jr. and you have your entire year and you have your goodbye ceremonies at every stadium. And that is awesome. But the reality of the fact is very few professional athletes get to enjoy that. And they have the hardest time in that disconnection from what life looked like when I was an athlete and a professional to what life looks like as a retired professional, right? And that was obviously that was my biggest thing. I mean, I say that I retired not because I was financially capable of doing it, but because the game had basically told me, listen, it's time. You need to walk away because we're going to continue to move on and you no longer can compete at this level. And so it was a really hard transition because once again, my identity, my purpose was all wrapped into who I was as an athlete, not who I was as an individual, as a man, as a human being. And the book, as I thank you for the plug right there, by the way. So this was, 15 years in the making of what was my journey, because we all whether we're a professional athlete or whether we just get out of college, right? Whether we go to college and we get into a profession, we all have to graduate to that next chapter in our life. And if we don't know what our greater vision is, if we don't know what our bigger purpose is, we're always going to be chasing the promotion. We're going to be chasing the next job. We're going to be chasing the money. And we all know that money is fleeting. The promotion dies, and jobs get you fired, right? And so what do you do if you haven't understood your purpose? And I think that's the biggest key, is that we have to really identify at any age, it doesn't matter, right? We can discover our purpose at 50. We can discover our purpose at 10 years old. That's fine. But when we discover our purpose, we can handle just about anything that life will throw our way.
That's perfectly stated, because look, I think that, what's interesting is that because an athlete is so focused on playing their sport and their game, it's sometimes when you said, well, the game sort of told me that I was done, kind of a thing. But I think you're going to find that there's a whole lot of athletes that they don't listen. They're like, no, I'm not going to do it. And, an interesting thought I had was that I guarantee you that each of you, after you retired, would watch a baseball game and say, are you kidding me? I can totally play better than that guy. I can pitch better than that guy, right? That guy's a joke, right? And in my case, that was the same way with me with sports, but also with music, where I played in a band a long time ago, and I'd go to a live show and I'd be like, wait a minute, I can play better than that guy. I should be up there. And I think there's a little bit of that fear of missing out. And sometimes that's hard to get past. I mean, Jacob, have you gone through some of that, or have you said, I'm done, I'm not even going to think about that?
Yeah. No, I think Josh hit the nail on the head. The identity thing is huge. And for me, just to touch briefly on that first, I spent the first 3 years of my professional career thinking that my identity was Jacob, the baseball player. And that was because the trajectory was like this. Everything was going great. I'm like, I don't need anything else. Like, this is it. Like, I'm a baseball player, and that's it. And, when the storm hit and everything got rocky, and all of a sudden people stopped calling, and all of a sudden these people that I thought were on my bus aren't there anymore, I'm like, man, like, do I really want my identity wrapped up in if I go 7 shutout, or I, give up 5 runs in the first inning? And I think just helping, that was a unique experience in my own career. It's not something that, maybe everybody goes through. Everybody's career is a little bit different, but, understanding your identity isn't who you are, isn't what you're doing, but rather what's actually important to you. So whether that's faith, family, friends, things of that nature, things where people care about you as much as a human being than they do about, what you do, so to speak. It's just really important. So, but yeah, Mark, like you said, I think, no, it's a common thing when you get out of any industry. Looking back, my first year out of the game, I didn't really watch any baseball. I didn't really have much interest in watching it. I watched other sports. Like, I love the competition. I actually went to my first baseball game in like 3 years, and that was because my daughter started softball, but she's on a baseball team. So yeah, but no, I definitely agree with you. It's hard to watch what you were doing previously when you're out of the game.
That's interesting. Josh, you want to follow up with that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that is the harsh reality of it is, and I reference this in the book, is, anytime that you leave a profession, whether it's professional sports or let's just say military, it's almost like a divorce, because they're moving on. They're still playing the game. They're still going forward. And you are now on the sidelines. And it's really hard to be on the other side of the sport when you are a part of it, right? When you were crossing over onto the mound, or you were crossing into the batter's box, or you were on the football field, right? Or of course, like in military, like when you were active as a Navy SEAL, or you were active as a Ranger, when you're on the other side, you are literally looking in and you're going, wait a second, I didn't change. Like, I'm still the same guy. And just like Jacob, like, why are you not answering my phone anymore? Like, why aren't you calling anymore? Because at the end of the day, I still have the same substance. I just don't have that same jersey on, or I don't have that same command on. And that was, part of the reasons why Kingsmen was built, was because there were so many men that were going into society broken from their past experience, going, wait a second, like, the world around me has changed, but I haven't changed. I'm still the same guy. I'm still a great guy. I still want to be excellent in these areas of my life, which when you were talking about it, it's faith, family, fitness, finance, and future. But we want to be really good at every one of those. We want to be exceptional fathers and exceptional husbands, but we also want to be exceptionally great when it comes to our finances and our businesses. And then, of course, we're always looking at the future. That's what we do when we were playing professional sports or in the military. The reason why we work so hard is because we're always playing for that future contract or that future opportunity to win a World Series or to get promoted and become a Navy SEAL, which many of my friends that I know, and Rangers, right? So that's the hardest thing that we deal with. And there's this reality, you have to surround yourself with people that are like-minded, especially when you get out of the game. And Kingsman was created simply for that reason, that, listen, I know the world around you has changed, but you're still good and we can still be great. And we can still, and I'm going to cuss here, we can still kick ass in life. And this is a great network of dudes that are going to help you do it. So.
Now, what do you think, I'll put you on the spot a little bit maybe, what do you think has been one of the things that that some of the guys you work with have sort of left behind or have lost along the way?
Well, when you say left behind, I would say, and I don't know which one you're asking on what they leave behind, but here's the thing is that most men feel like when they get out of the game, when they get out of military life, when they get out of like that previous profession, that they're a failure because they didn't live up to the expectations that they did. And one thing that really is, it's kind of a mind, it messes with your head, is when people constantly are coming up to you and saying, Jacob, like, dude, you were awesome. You were a professional athlete you're a Major League Baseball player for X amount of years. And you're like, yeah, but I wanted to be one for 20 years, not for 5 years or whatever that is. Right. And so every time that somebody reminds you how long you were in the military or as an athlete, and it wasn't to the extent that you wanted to, you feel like a failure. And you're reminded about this pain that's like, just stop it. Like, I didn't complete my mission. I didn't complete what I felt like I was being called to do. And so I think that what our biggest thing, one of the things that we talk about in Kingsmen a lot is understanding that your failure was everything that you needed in order to create the next best chapter in your life. You have to understand the things in your past that happened to you are not, those aren't bad examples of a life that was not filled. Those are things that actually happened for you in order to position yourself so you can be exceptional in this area of your life. So Jacob, of course, is taking all of these things that he did. And one of the things that he said that I just absolutely love is that he recognized that networking. He recognized like the people that he was around were going to be people that he could surround himself on the other side of the game. And that is something that I completely failed at. And that's why it took me 15 years to bridge that gap when it took Jacob 3 years to bridge that gap, which is impressive, right? And I think the sooner that you can realize that, the shorter that gap is going to be for you.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I guess let's follow that up though. Jacob, did you ever have that situation? Because look, I mean, you were one of the top baseball players in the friggin' world for a while. And the problem is that when you're in that position, sometimes what you end up doing is comparing yourself to, like, let's say Justin Verlander or whoever, or Garrett Cole, and not necessarily, gee, I'm so much better than the 11,000 people that are pitching in the minors in college and blah, blah, blah. You know, sometimes people don't look back and see the mountain that they just climbed. They look and see the little bit that they still need to climb, kind of a thing. So I guess in your case, Jacob, tell me a little bit about, I mean, did you feel that way sometimes where you said, gee, I mean, you start comparing yourself and should have been more, or not too bad?
Yeah. No, I was smiling when Josh was talking because, you know, I have situations like that. I had a situation like that today. And I was telling my business partner, I was like, man, I get more backhanded compliments than anybody because, like, they're like, oh, I remember when you did this, but then this happened. And it's like, hey, like, appreciate you reminding me about that. And I think even for me, you know, being a high draft pick was a huge blessing. But at the same time, there were expectations both that I put on myself and that, you know, outside people put on me. And I remember, you know, probably 4 or 5 years into my career, looking at my then girlfriend, now wife at the time, and just saying, man, this isn't how I expected it to go. I think that's, you know, that's just life, man. Like, life doesn't go the way that we always think it's going to go. And I think, you know, the mindset of taking those failures and understanding that there's something to be learned from each time you fail is huge. And, you know, the mind is the ultimate tool. And I look at what I'm doing now and the experiences that I had in the game, and if everything was as rosy as I had pictured it when I got drafted, I wouldn't be able to give the advice that I'm able to give to guys as they're walking through the path that I walked, because I would say, oh, well, yeah, chances are your first round pick, you might make $100 million and like everything's just going to be great. But instead, I can sit there and say, hey, look, we need to actually take a look at this because we don't know what tomorrow holds. And it's just an important reminder that as we fail, everybody fails, but having that mindset in the right place is just so important.
That's perfectly stated. Listen, before we go much further, just real quick to point out, if anybody has questions, please put them in the Q&A section on the right. You'll see that on the right column there, for either Jacob or Josh or myself. So make sure you throw those in there and make them really interesting, cool questions. And we're happy to ask those and maybe bring you in to ask them directly. So moving forward, I think one thing I'd love to ask you both, and by the way, I've read Josh's book, Strike Three, available at your local everything, Amazon, etc. It's a great, to me, a sort of a blueprint or a roadmap for, you sort of understanding what you've gone through and you're going through, but also how to pull out of it. And I think that's really fantastic. I appreciate books that give me advice and sort of things to do and how to get out of things instead of just identifying the problem. There's a solution there to an extent. But give me, maybe I'll start with Josh here. Give me maybe 2 or 3 things that you would give to maybe a current athlete. What are a couple bits of advice that you would offer somebody who's playing right now, who, maybe they're in their early 20s and they're not completely focused on what's happening at the end of the line?
Oh man, that is Pandora's box right there. Holy cow. Here's the thing is I would say a couple things. One is that there is no one thing that's going to put you on the straight path. One of the things I love what Jacob had just talked about is that, when you experience a failure, a setback, something that didn't go your way, it wasn't planned, right? This wasn't what I had envisioned. When you realize that it can actually serve you in a greater purpose, boy, that gives you a lot of peace. It allows you to go through the storm. Like, what is the lesson I'm going to learn for this? And just like Jacob was talking about is like, eventually what's going to happen is that hopefully on the other side of this, you're going to be so empowered to help other people and empower them to get through this. This is how you become relatable, right? When like other people have gone through hard stuff with you, you create this bond with them. You're like, okay, I can like that guy because he's struggled, or I like that gal because she struggled in the same way that I did. And that builds that trust. One of the things you talked about earlier in this is like how many athletes and professional athletes, especially, and even military men and women, they don't trust a lot of people because those other people haven't gone through what they've had to go through. But when you have that connection, oh my gosh, like that is a bond that you can never break, right? Because you have this commonality. And so what I would say is that, first of all, just be able to accept that. And the other thing is that once just as hard as you've had to work to become this professional, whatever it is in that area, you have to realize that when you are no longer doing that in that season of your life, you have to do the same thing on the other side. So getting a coach, getting a mentor, pouring into yourself, building yourself up. Like, free content is awesome, but free content to a certain point, I'm telling you what, you'll get what you pay for. So if you really are serious about being a professional in another field, like what Jacob is right now, like, you have to pay to play. Right? You have to be able to willing to invest in yourself to get to that next level of professionalism, because I love Justin Roethlisberger, who's on yesterday. And one of the things he talked about was that talent will get you noticed, but consistency will get you paid. And that is just such a brilliant way to share, because a lot of us have talent. A lot of us, everybody on the, that you're going to be talking to today, and then even in the audience, are very talented people. And so they're all going to get noticed. It's their consistency in what they bring to the table daily that actually gets them paid. And I would say that as an athlete, what are you willing to do now that's going to set you up so that you can have that discipline in your life when the game officially is over?
Oh, that was great. Good. And it's true. Consistency gets you paid. And And it's something where, you mentioned earlier also about the whole notion of common bonds, and it's absolutely true regardless of what that bond is. It's funny, I've spoken to many people who they sort of they don't take, or they take for granted maybe the fact that people are like, if I went to University of wherever, Maryland or something, if I reach out to any alum of the school, they're going to be fired up to talk to me over someone who went to Virginia or wherever it is, right? It's going to be something that we all shared 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever years of our lives at that school. We all share that common bond. And sometimes people are like, oh yeah, I went there 30 years ago, but who cares? It doesn't matter. Everybody typically, 90% of the people had a great time in school. That's a common bond. Or if you mentioned the military, or if you played a sport. I played rugby my senior year in college, and now I can talk to any rugby player, and it's like instant whatever. Or I play hockey now, instant connection because of the sport, because of something. So especially when you're looking to build on your future and your career and what you're doing with your life, seek out people that share common bonds, because they will be absolutely willing to help in any sort of way, give you advice, guidance, tips, introductions, all that sort of thing. That's a great point. Jacob, now that you're getting your career really cranking in the financial space, give me a sense of what you think. What are some of the common misconceptions that people might have about, let's say, athletes and their money and how they control it or don't control it?
Yeah, I think that's a super common question. I think the best answer is that athletes, are thought of as they don't want to understand what's going on. And I just think they couldn't be further from the truth. Like, anybody that has made, any money understands how hard it is to make that money, and they want to understand what's going on. But generally the issue in the space that I'm working in is that most people want to sound like the smartest guy in the room. So rather than talking to them in terms that they understand, I think Josh, in your industry, and Mark, in your industry, as you guys coach clients and walk clients through that, it's the same kind of thing. When you come into a room, reading the room and understanding how you can be relatable to who you're talking to. And that's not the same for everybody, but that's probably the biggest misconception that I see.
If you talk to a room of financial advisors or wealth advisors, you get a lot of one-uppers trying to say that, oh, well, my this and my that, and I've got special insight, and I've got this unique proprietary blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, I would want to give the business to someone who I felt actually listened to me and would dedicate the time to listen to me and what I really want. And maybe I don't know what I really want, so maybe it's someone who will stop and educate me. I was giving this pointer to somebody else where I said, look, I don't have a clue, or I didn't have a clue really what to look for if I wanted to look at family lawyers that got involved with estate planning and wills and that sort of stuff. I don't have a clue about that. That's not my expertise. But if I saw a lawyer, let's say on LinkedIn or somewhere, who would say, here are the 3 most important things to consider when, will, your last will and testament, whatever it is, I'd be like, well, here's a guy or woman who wants to educate me. I want to talk to them, not the person that says they're the best family lawyer in, wherever, Baltimore or something. So I think the same would go with you, right, in your industry. How can you stand out in that sort of thing, Jacob?
Yeah, no, that's the most common question. Obviously, we're all in the service-based industry. And I think the biggest thing that I do in my industry in particular on the education side is just being relatable and authentic to the client and helping them understand that, look, what we're talking about doesn't have to be the most complicated thing in the world, that we can walk through it in terms that you understand, and just helping them understand that, hey, here's some things we should be looking out for. So then that way they're never blindsided by what's actually going on. But I just think so much of it is being relatable to them, being authentic. We all have one superpower. I saw this here recently and I'm going to steal it. And that superpower is just being authentic to you. This world is so conformist, where it's like, oh, well, somebody does it this way, so I should do it that way. And I think it couldn't be further from the truth. Everybody is super unique, and be you. And I think that's the superpower we all have.
Spot on. Josh, with what you're doing now, especially, there may be some competition out there kind of a thing, but you know what? I don't think there's that much competition at all with what you're doing. And you have a gigantic country and world that might be interested in what you're doing. Tell me how you want to be able to try to stand out a little bit more with what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think just kind of going on with Jacob was saying, I love that I was thinking of those words too, and authentic came to mind. So
Yeah,
it was awesome that that happens to be a common theme. I think
yeah,
one of the biggest things that we also have to find is our own voice. When you get into this next career, this next position, it's really hard to find your voice. You don't know, you don't know what you don't know in a sense, right? And you're trying to imitate those mentors and those people around you that have been your advisors for a long time. And I think that as soon as you start to be able to find your voice, your true authentic self will really start to shine and go about it. As I didn't know what I wanted to do after the game. I really didn't. And so one of the things that I think was also a blessing for me is that I was able to create partnerships. And the reason why I'm involved in 8 companies now is because I was latching on to other people's passions. With the reason why we have a health and fitness center is because I have a friend that was passionate about health and fitness, and I was able to become a partner with him. The reason why I got into real estate was my dad was a builder, and I didn't want to pound nails the rest of my life. So I was like, well, I'll get on the other side of the desk and I'll sell the properties. And so I was able to do that. And so every step of the way, the reason why I've been able to build and have impact and influence greater than my own capabilities is because I've partnered with great people. And from there, what I was able to do eventually is find my passion. I was able to find my greater purpose. And so I would really encourage each and everybody, if you're struggling with that, it's like, you don't have to know that yet. You don't have to know your ultimate dream yet, but find someone that inspires you and follow that passion for a while, follow that dream for a while. And what I guarantee what that'll happen is that you'll start to open doors for yourself personally. And then don't be afraid to go through it, right? The whole reason why Kingsmen was created is because I did have some great things going on in my life with these other companies, but then I was able to pursue an even greater purpose, something that fulfilled me even more. And the reason why I do this now is because I've found my voice. I know who I am, and I know the greater purpose why I'm here to serve. And it's like, let's go. Like, the gates are open and we're full steam ahead. So I hope that everybody has that headspace that they allow themselves to do that.
that's fantastic. And look, that's what I mean. That's my passion too, is to really unearth in everybody that same feeling, that whole, hey, how do I morning just fired up, just excited to be doing what I do. And even if it's work and it's a job, but it's a job that you enjoy doing, that you're fulfilled by, that you contribute to, that you're rewarded for. There's no greater joy than to have, if it's something that you are being paid for to do and you love doing it, that is the best thing. And look, I mean, Jacob, I'm assuming, yes, you like doing what you do because you're getting paid for it and you get paid for it. But at the same time, I know that it gives you tremendous satisfaction and sort of that feeling of, I'm helping these people out. Because of me, they are in this better spot. And it's kind of good for the ego to an extent, right? Or I don't know if that's the right term, but it makes you feel good, right, Jacob? Assuming?
Oh, absolutely. And I think,
Yeah.
I think that passion, combining that passion with also kind of where you're at. What I mean by that is, as we started our own company, I think I had passion around what I was doing, but I didn't have passion around where I was doing it at, so to speak, if that makes sense. And I think,
yeah, of course.
it was taking that next leap where it's like, okay, I know I'm passionate about this. I know this is what I'm meant to do in my next stage, but I'm not currently doing it in the way that I'm, waking up in the morning and saying, man, I can't wait to do this. And I think, just to touch briefly too on what Josh said on your own voice, that's something that I probably had the hardest time with, because as I transitioned into the work that I do now, obviously having mentors in this space, people that were extremely successful, that were, I could look up to and say, man, they're doing it the right way. I kind of want to be around them. I think the trap we can all fall into is saying like, oh, well, they do it this way, so I have to do it this way. Or they talk to the client this way, so I have to talk to the client this way. And taking bits and pieces is just like when you're a player. As a pitcher, I'm not going to watch somebody else's bullpen and then say, hey, I want to throw it exactly how he does it. But hey, maybe I'll work on my changeup how he does it. But it's just being authentic to you, like me and Josh are talking about, that it's just so important. And obviously that takes time. There's no there's no secret sauce there, but just the more experience you can get in it, the more you can understand what really works for you.
Oh, perfect, spot on. Look, we're going to wrap up this panel in a minute because we've got a lot of folks coming up. But Jacob, I know that you'd love to maybe have some conversations today with some folks that might want to talk to you a little bit more about your work and what you do. But what's the best way for people to find out about it now?
Yeah, so our website is jlswealth.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, but it's mainly just pictures of my kiddos. So if it's business related, I'd recommend LinkedIn, and happy to connect with anybody here and help them walk through whatever they're doing next.
That's fantastic. Cool. And Josh, I think you and I are going to be doing a lot of stuff down the road. And Jacob, I think we are too. Because look, I think we found that this platform is really a lot of fun. It's fantastic. It's a great way to not just meet people, but just interact with them. And tell some of the folks here now how they can find out more about your upcoming events.
Yeah. If you can, well, you can follow me, of course, on Facebook and just type Josh Kalinowski. I'll put that in there because Kalinowski is a little bit of a longer name than Turner. So it's a little bit complicated. And then, of course, you can go to joshkalinowski.com. That's all my information from Kingsmen. And then, of course, all of the things that we do from our coaching and speaking and opportunities there. We also have a podcast. And here, I would open this invitation right there. One of the things that I've got a podcast called JK Experience. We had Mark on, and it was awesome to have him there. But that platform really is for us to help you get your message out there. So I know every one of you have got a business, you've got a passion that you want to get your voice heard more. So just either look me up on social media, get a hold of me through my website, and I would love to get you on so we can get you guys heard out there and hopefully build your network, build your sphere of influence and your authority in your space. But and that's really what we're about, man, right? It's just like with Mark is, I think that's one of the reasons why Mark and I get along so well, is that it is about helping others achieve those great things in their life. And when you know your purpose, once again, you're not working. I mean, you're grinding sometimes, there's no doubt about it, but it's so much fun and the days are so much more fulfilling.
Wow, what a great way to end it. Well, look, gentlemen, I really appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate you.
All right, thank you.